down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world, I'm excited. You know why? Because I like to stretch myself and get out of the comfort zone. I'm in my little bubble out here trying to grind it out in the real estate acquisition world. And I get random emails. Not only that, I get random text messages from random people that want to buy my assets all the time. Yeah, I know we're in a hot market. But I also get random emails from random VAs for opportunities to be on the radio show and for me to be on podcasts. And I'm always like kind of just sketchy. Well, one day, a couple of weeks ago, some awesome VA that I'm probably going to hire here pretty soon messaged me and is like, hey, I want you to introduce to Kison Patel. And I'm like, the Patels in Oklahoma, they are dominators in the hotel space, which, I've crossed paths with these folks and always had a great opportunity. And I was like, who is this guy? And so I quickly Googled him up, and he had this software out called Deal Room. And I was pretty stoked on it for a minute. And I was like, okay, great. Hey, we'll have this interview. And then 2 weeks later, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, August 24th, 2022. I have a superstar on my radio show that has just has got his hands in some very powerful things. I'm really excited to interview him and grow with him. So please welcome Mr. Kison Patel. Hello.
Nice to be acquainted.
We're not going to get into your credentials because you wouldn't be on the show if you weren't legit. So we'll just leave it at that. So you're an entrepreneur, right? You have this merger and acquisition tattooed everywhere I look. I look you up on. You've written a couple books. I see your LinkedIn. Like, first of all, the LinkedIn is so not enough information. I go to your LinkedIn. I'm like, who is this guy, and why am I having him on the show? And I'm like, wow, I know why I'm having him on the show, because he's a smart dude. Everything there's so many little breadcrumbs about you that have point me in these certain directions. And I have come to my own, just thought of you of extremely smart entrepreneur that has pivoted when one thing is working and you kind of stretch yourself into another space. So let's cover in where'd you grew up from? Like, where are you from? Like, are you, who are you? Like, let's start.
Yeah, sure. So I'm born from immigrant parents, and actually born in Chicago, but grew up in small town Nebraska from the time I was 3 years old until I was 19. They ran a motel business that they had. They had one asset and they had two. It is very much from the region we're from, specifically India. It's heavily dominated in the U.S. for that.
Yeah, your last
sector.
name is like Marriott.
We're getting up there. We started the little independents, and now you're seeing a lot of Patels with the bigger chains.
And when I stay at some smaller chains, I mean, just the work ethic that you folks have, and it's like a family. It's like a religion of sorts. I don't know. I don't try to be disrespectful, but I'm like, I met this one girl. It was in Chattanooga. I rented a Hilton, and she was a Patel, and I got to go look up her name. In a year, I do events down there in Chattanooga, and I try to book the space again. And she moved into another hotel, and I conversed with her for a little while. And it's just like, she had to die down here at this low grade Hilton or whatever flag she had at that time. I mean, you guys really have a system in place. You didn't want to pursue hotels. You didn't want to stay in that space.
I did for a little bit. So there's some things with that. I feel like you buy a hotel and you put all your family members. Cause I remember being 11, 12 years old and had to clean rooms on the weekends. And that's, you got familiar with the business. I ended up, like the parents typically do the same thing. They want you to go engineering, become a doctor and stuff like that. I struggled. I technically failed out of undergrad. I had a very short attention span, and I couldn't push through to college. In high school, I could get by. I knew if I read the book twice, I'll pass the exams. But then in college, a lot of those classes I took were lecture-based. I couldn't stop myself from daydreaming about money, cars, and women. That I'd actually focus what I needed to get, and ended up failing out of undergrad. So I was at this tough spot where I was really rock bottom. I found myself just trying to find whatever job I could. Ended up working for an uncle in the south side of Chicago. He had a number of these Subway franchises, and a hard time. I mean, that's the hardest thing, is you work from family, that treatment that you get. And I had to learn a work discipline from there. So I worked with him for a year from the bottom, washing dishes. And yeah, it's something at that point in time. The reason I bring that time frame up, I feel like that's what things changed. I went from this person that always looked for the quick buck, because I was always peddling CDs or whatever it was in college and things. And something just snapped. It was a tough job market. I couldn't find a better job. I didn't have that college degree. And I just came in with one day saying, look, I'm putting 200% in everything. And whatever I usually spend the 4 or 5 hours to go do washing dishes, I just knocked out hour and a half. And my aunt was one supervising that site. And I went to my aunt and said, hey, auntie, I'm done doing. And just like, she didn't believe me. She looks over my shoulders and it's like, all right, go sweep and mop, and gives me the next thing to do. I do that quick as I can, come back, so I go bust tables. And next thing you know, I progress. I go learn to make sandwiches. And at the end of the year, I was managing 2 stores for them. They offered me a partnership. At the time, I looked at where I wanted to go. I thought a lot of the things that my limitations were around not having money. So I said, hey, I want to make money, but I don't want this not having a college degree to get in my way. I thought real estate would be the career path to circumvent that. And I got a real estate license. I joined a company. I mean, mind you, I'm still working part-time at Subway. At nighttime, I go make sandwiches. I make a sandwich for you, Stephen, be like, hey, by the way, if you're looking to rent and buy, here's my card. And I'd be passing my business card out.
Sandwich. It's savvy.
6 months.
I love that you have no, I mean, you started at the bottom, right? I mean, my big question is, when did you define what you really wanted? Like, during this process, were you uneasy? And why didn't you jump on
tired of being broke, tired of making $5, an hour?
The partnership, like, people don't know that people think they own a Subway, they're rich. They're not. Subway is like not a great franchise, but that's just
right now. Yeah.
But the reality is, like, you had an opportunity at a young age just to start already ownership, and you walked away from that. What happened? What was that defining moment there?
Yeah, I thought it sounded good. I've already done it. And I want to do something bigger. I wanted a new challenge. And that was the idea of selling real estate. And I had a tough time. I worked for 6 months at this company. It was Baird and Warner. So they're one of the largest privately held real estate brokerage firms in the Chicago area. I couldn't sell a single house. Nobody wanted to buy a house from this young kid in his early 20s. And I was fortunate enough, I ended up getting an introduction to a couple of folks that were starting up an M&A advisory practice. The guy just sold his consulting business to McDonald's, and whatever reasons from that experience, he wanted to build his consulting practice around M&A advisory. And I joined in, and they had this interesting model where they've generated a lot of leads online, and they had a lot of Indian descent people reaching out wanting to buy or sell a business. And they thought, why don't we have this kid? Like, we can barely understand them. Why don't we have this kid, work with them? And it worked out really well. I remember the first business I sold was some convenience store for like $110,000. And I progressed with that company for a year, but I felt like there wasn't a true strategy there, that they were buying, selling whatever they could. And it's like, all right, I've learned enough. I can do this myself. So I opened up my own practice downtown Chicago and said, why don't I focus on one asset? And I remember doing these like truck stops and gas stations, but I did that for a year and a half. I ended up finding my home with hospitality. So going back to the hotel industry, okay, cool. I ended up doing M&A, starting with the little private, family member type of owned businesses that I'd expect to see, but progressed to working with Kimpton Extended Stay America on more of the corporate transactions. And then I ended up moving over to work with financial institutions, where I'd work with larger regional banks to acquire smaller community banks or help the small community banks sell.
Yeah.
Then 2007 came and everything sort of went to shit.
So I can see in your heart that you are a deal maker. You said that it was a challenge. So you take things on to push yourself to see if you can figure it out. And when you figure it out, you move on to the next, whatever that is. Like, I love that you have Deal Room as a software. It's totally, when I think of, M&A, which is, ladies and gentlemen, mergers and acquisitions. So when he says it flippantly, it's like buying, selling an entity, a business. And there's a lot of due diligence involved. And is that the aspect that you like? Were you the deal maker, or were you the due diligence behind the scenes, crunching all the numbers, making sure and verifying everything? Because it gets real sticky. Because I've been in several acquisitions, buying, and I sold 2 businesses, and I've helped several people acquire a couple businesses. Everyone lies. So
Yeah.
I just like, what side did you do on that? Or I mean, obviously, have your small firm, when you started out, you did it all. But what was it? The deal that acquiring, like helping this individual? Was it the?
It was definitely a journey to get there. Where I think the thing I wanted to get out of the advisory space was I truly felt I hit my ceiling. When you're a little boutique, not a branded firm, you'll find that the $100 million plus transactions don't come to you. You know, you may get an opportunity to bid on it, but they're going to end up going to some name brand firm. And I was super frustrated with that. And I remember trying to do my own deals. A recession happened. It really limited the financing for that. And I wanted to do a startup. I got this idea from some research I did on a public company. And I noticed they bought a bunch of .coms, like 100 of them for $6 million. And it was basically like an ad network to generate leads. And I noticed like financial domains actually have a really high, because back then it used to be 25, 50 cents a click, but they're $2, $3 a click for. So I started buying a bunch of these financial domains.
Yeah.
And I bought it at 500 at one point, and I was building custom software.
Pages. These are like dark pages.
Yeah, well, we're building these automated domains that would generate content based on the keyword of the domain. Okay. And it would really ramp up traffic. I mean, some of these are getting 30,000, 50,000, up to 100,000 a month of traffic, and you're getting all this Google ad revenue. And there was a nice little thing going on. And one day Google changes the algorithm. Everything's off the grid. You went, this climbing revenue just went straight down to zero. And so that ended up becoming a total failure. But at that time, I was working with engineers, developing custom software, and was extremely intrigued by the way they were utilizing project management tools. We were using Jira way back when. And I kept reflecting back to M&A, thinking, why wasn't there a project management tool for M&A? We did every single thing on Excel, very cumbersome and tedious. This would have made it a lot easier, just as they convinced me, because I said, hey guys, here's an Excel sheet of what we need to do. They're like, well, why don't we use this tool? That's where it led to that original inspiration for starting Deal Room in 2012, was to be able to bring that in.
Well, I love the visual aspect of the software as well. I think that's the problem. Just so you know, I'm a part owner of an accounting firm, and we do evaluations. I have another partner, and I'm in another little acquisition situation there, and we do evaluations. And the visual aspect is always missing in the due diligence. And I noticed that in Deal Room that you are pretty heavy on visualization for graphs. It just spoons it up for you. Did you do that creative process, like the need? Because like when you're doing a merger, the person on the other side usually is more detailed and anal and more on the number side, right? But then there's always a creative person that wants to see it in a big picture. Did you put that dot together there? I'm assuming
there's a good lesson here. If you look at the product today, I think less than 3% of it represents my ideas. And cool. I would say when I started the company, you get this feature creep thing, right? Where you start making an outline of all the functionality you need to build, and then you end up making 100 freaking things that you want to build. And then you're like, where do I start? And you're essentially starting on something that you may not originally wanted to build. And that's what we did. We built this more of a marketplace that we went to market with, instead of like a pure project management, thinking we got to solve the front end problem first and then get to the management part. And it failed miserably. I mean, we literally created a sophisticated dumpster for deals. And what ended up happening, we went back to the drawing board from zero through advice of a good friend of mine, and took this more of the lean startup approach, where can we do discovery with these cohorts of our representations of customers that we'd like, and understand what are their top pain points, what are they really struggling with, and be able to look for patterns, as we did like 40 of those kind of interviews. And that's what led to say, hey, we really need to focus on this specific part of diligence. And this is the tedious part, is doing this on Excel. Yeah. And it took that model, because as you shape the solution, we kept doing these interviews and getting feedback on it. And that's what allowed us to build a solution that was right for the market. And we keep doing that. Even today, we keep doing it, because if we look at this one product that we created in the beginning was to solve the due diligence part, because you normally put a huge list of all your things you want in Excel, and then you set up this virtual data room, and then people look at this Excel thing and they got to upload the document, find the index number, put it in Excel. It's just all manually done. One index number gets thrown off, it could throw the whole spreadsheet off. It was, they emailed this thing around like 13 times during the deal. Instead, it's like, hey, we solved that. Then over time, we worked with the next client and said, hey, after we close the deal, we got to integrate this company, which is even more complex and a bigger headache. We're like, well, we can add some functionality and make it continuous, so both diligence and integration can reside together. Became value. We kept listening and pipeline management. Then the next thing you know, this product has evolved in this full lifecycle management solution end to end. But it's always listening, keeping an ear open. Okay, what are the other problems? Wait, how many, is this like a real viable thing that we want to build into the platform?
You know, it's really interesting when you're talking, it reminded me of the book called Rework, where they were building Basecamp. Yep. And they were just stuck on all these features and features and features. And they would get like 2 clients that would like add more features. And then they just threw that out the window and just stayed in this core, and their whole brand blew up. And it's a great book to read called Rework. And it kind of reminds me of you. We all want to fulfill everyone, but is that really our market? Is that really our client that's going to fulfill that? Or there's just this outline people of 5 people. So, and then I love that it was just a natural progression of just what the problems that it solved, right? That's the solution for an entrepreneur. I want to provide a product or a solution for people to solve their problems. So how is Deal Room for you? I mean, you still, where do you spend most of your time now in your career? Is it working on the software? I know we talked about you acquiring another company earlier. I was talking about Investor Deal Room, and you were like, dang, I should have bought that. But what do you go, you work, is this your baby? I mean, I see you're all over that website. When I creeped on you there, I was like, okay, this guy, you have a video of yourself. I mean, you're very passionate about that baby. Is that where you spend most of your time right now?
Right now, we're about 40 to 43 people in the company. We operate with this umbrella brand, M&A Science. So there's, in addition to Deal Room, we spun out a self-service solution for smaller firms called Firm Room.
And your podcast is that too.
Yeah. Our podcast is there, which extends into digital media business, where we have the books and we do events. And then we also run an online academy program for practitioners at various levels looking to learn core M&A. We got a non-for-profit to extend some of this curriculum to universities that don't teach kids about M&A, and saying, hey, M&A is a pretty damn viable career path. And absolutely. In fact, this industry needs some diversity, some women and people of diverse backgrounds to make M&A better, since the nature of doing business and commerce is diversity. So that there's, those things that we advocate for. Right now, the big focus for myself is building out the sales function, where 95% of our business is generated inbound. I feel like we have a very mature engineering team, very mature marketing function, but we don't have a outbound sales motion. And we have some clear wins. Like, we know the billion plus publicly traded companies, we do really well as long as they're doing 2 deals or more, or if it's a private equity backed roll up. Sure, we do extremely well in those segments. Why are we waiting for them to come to us? Why don't we go out and start reaching out to them saying, hey, we service the customer just like you. We help them solve this problem. Can we get a 15-minute conversation to see if it warrants further exploration for your company?
Well said. Yeah, just another area that you have to develop, right? A whole new sales team, outbound.
It's always something. Now this year we had to stand up an HR function. And I get that. So I get to chat with other CEOs, which you probably got to deal with the same thing. It's like, man, they're creating rules for me to follow. And it's
Yep. Well, Paycom is huge. It's a $1 billion company, and they have a whole HR suite into their accounting suite. It's pretty powerful the way they handle HR. I mean, technology is coming so fast. I mean, when you were talking, I was thinking about ad tech and just how far just advertising has just changed. Because I used to be in that space. We were doing park websites, and we were selling leads at $6 a piece for auto loans. And we're just doing lead gen on the most random websites on the planet. And we would just buy space, and then Google just shut it down. I know exactly what you were talking about at that point. We thought we arrived on the 13th floor, and then here we go. It just came crashing down in a very quick way. So you pivoted towards the software. So I mean, so you're still doing mergers and acquisitions? I mean, are you on the base level of, Or, I mean, you're trying to create your own acquisitions. I mean, I'm assuming.
We're early in that. I think as a company, we still need to grow our organic channels to start looking at inorganic growth. I think for us, what's exciting is working with a variety of different companies, because you do learn their strategies. I can't say we're hands-on in helping them execute those strategies, where we're helping them identify targets and really run.
It's liability too.
Well, maybe it's a good gig for us, but we do work on setting up their infrastructure. When we do go, what I've noticed is this common pattern that a lot of the front end stuff is pretty mature for a lot of these larger companies, but then when it comes to the real execution of doing diligence through integration, that science hasn't really evolved. It's just, hey, we've done it what we first figured out because we want Excel's right there, email's right there. And then the practice, it hasn't really evolved or shaped much. And as an industry as a whole, it's very siloed. We noticed that when I started working with these companies. That's where a lot of the educational arm of our business emerged from. It's saying, hey, why is there no standardization? Why does every company we work with have such a different way of thinking about M&A? And that's where the idea of doing a podcast was, can we interview practitioners, learn some of the lessons from their experience, identify what are actually proven techniques, document that, and that's where we started creating frameworks and things around the best practices, which gives us some of that inertia where people, hey, these guys are thought they know all these different practices, they consolidate it from a lot of recognized companies, and then we're here to help you standardize those practices through the technology platform as well.
Awesome.
That way you can adopt this faster and be on A game.
You mentioned earlier about the educational space, institutional space. Do you think you're going to pursue that? And
we have an online school that's a self-service program, and now we're extending it with some live trainings, and it's coming along. I do like the space. I definitely like the educational space of it. I just think there's a lot of room. What we've always looked for is these white spaces. When I enter a little area, I want to define exactly what we're focusing on with the goal of just being number one, like nothing below that. If we're going to enter that space, we're going to make sure, whether it's this year, next year, or 10 years from now, we do know that there's an angle for us to become the best. And that's where Deal Room started from, that, hey, there's all these data rooms, but there wasn't this real end. The workflows weren't married there. That project management wasn't there. We could be the top project management tool for M&A.
Cool.
When we looked at the schools, it was the same thing. There was consulting firms that provided these training programs, and then they had the well-known business schools, which were expensive, and even their curriculum was pretty damn outdated. You go there and you're learning from somebody that did M&A maybe 10 years ago. You're learning how things were done historically, and you're learning a lot of the strategies.
The approach, right.
But you're not learning the actual practical execution in today's environment with today's
technology. I mean, SaaS business models are, I'm assuming that acquisition's got to be totally different than a convenience store. I mean, it's inventory, tenure, tax returns. I mean, it's pretty easy evaluation, right? But a SaaS business model, there's a bunch of, of course, I've read about this a lot. There's a bunch of ratios that, rebound rate and all this other stuff. I mean, all that stuff that's totally different type of education and how to acquire that business. So it's interesting. So it's always going to be a moving target. How do you see yourself? I mean, in my mind, you're kind of just now kind of getting grooved in what you love to do, right? I mean, I can see the passion in your eyes and your face. Are you happy where you're at? I mean, can you? What else? What's your goals? I mean, 40 staff of 40s, not too bad. I mean, Fortune 500.
We got a foundation. I think for us, we're still building our talent pool here because we don't have that strong go-to-market. There's a lot for us to really grow. I think we have nice pillars and a platform that we created. We're building a good brand in the market. So I think there's just a lot staying core on the mission about modernizing M&A. And we're just noticing it's for a greater good, that these are the largest transactions in the world that make a huge impact to
sways people's
so many
lives.
people.
This right? lives.
And I think right now, when I remember I talked to a group, it was about 3 years ago, and I just mentioned M&A, and I was like, what are the emotions? Like, what words do you think of M&A? And I didn't get a bunch of positive words.
Negative.
I got a lot of like
my
destruction. Exactly. And like that, there's a problem with that. And then what I'm realizing from this experience, right? We came in to solve the problem, build software, but there's this bigger shift that needs to happen in the industry. And that's basically going from a finance focus activity to a people focused exercise.
That's where the HR comes in. Okay. I was wondering how that played in.
There's part of it with HR, but it's a lot around the leadership and saying, hey, if we're going to do a business together, Stephen, I'm interested in buying your business or our businesses coming together. Can we spend the time to mutually understand our organization's respected values? Now, they may sound the same, right? We use the same keywords, but let's talk about what that actually means. Let's understand each respected company's culture and our leadership approaches. And when we can come together around that and be able to communicate, we can get our teams aligned around the goals, knowing that every M&A deal has this vision for some kind of innovation. You know, why today's state that after the deal is closed, it turns into pure chaos, confusion, frustration, eventually blowups? And why can't we create a model where people are super motivated knowing, hey,
Right. Well,
I'm part of this M&A deal that's going to create value, that's actually unlocking opportunities for my career progress instead of, I got to leave this because this is a shit show I can't deal with anymore.
You know, Kison, I was going to ask you, what is the number? Is it more frequent now than it's been in the 80s? Because like, I think the word acquisition was coined in the 80s. It just seemed like everything was, I'm going to lose my job. You know, 401k was just introduced then, and they're slashing my benefits. You know, that's where all that negativity came from. I'm assuming late 70s, early 80s. What's the number now? I mean, I'm assuming there's got to be a lot more people on the planet, but a lot more. Is it more frequent now? I mean,
the activity is crazy. The last year was insanely crazy.
Like how many? I mean, business brokers are coming out of the woodwork, and I mean, there's no regulatory either. I noticed this too. Anybody can be a business broker. You know, and like you said earlier, this is like a hidden, like small little world, but it's really not, because it's changing people's lives and billions of dollars are changing hands. But we just think it's out of our scope. So what would you say in your software in the deal room? What size of acquisition is pretty? What people are using the software for? Is it like 100 million, 50 million, 1 million?
You know, it ranges because our clients are going to be larger of size by nature, and their activities are going to range. They may be doing little acqui-hires, or Emerson right now is wrapping up a $10 billion acquisition on the platform.
Cool.
So and everything in between. So there is a wide range. A lot of it is understanding what that corporation's strategy is with M&A. Are they consolidating a sector and they're rolling up a bunch of dental clinics? Okay, great. Like, we understand that they're going to be doing a high volume of small transactions. Or are they doing some big game-changing move here and doing a complete transformation of the business, where we've had one that was liquidating a bunch of these old print businesses and going completely digital. So they're doing a bunch of divestitures and a bunch of acquisitions, and they went complete 180 from one business to a totally different business through acquisitions.
Wow. And so you guys could ride alongside your clients, right? Do people, I mean, I'm assuming since you have the wisdom and you wrote the software, I mean, they're probably giving you feedback.
Yeah, that's the fun part, is like, how do you build these workflows to make it efficient so you can do these deals and capture the value? Yeah. And I think it goes to collaboration. If you can keep people involved in the loop, especially when you start working, and you want to do it in the right way. You know, we want to plan together and get aligned about how we're going to generate value without breaking any of those jumping laws, and do it in that uniform way. And that doesn't really exist. It just manual, figure it out yourself. Hopefully you're working with some good leaders that know what they're doing.
That's awesome. All right, we're going to wrap this up, man. So tell me about your family now. You know, you started out the Subway deal. I mean, they must be really proud of you now. I mean, what's it like? Now you're the go-to guy for, you know, acquisitions and mergers and stuff. So, I mean, they're obviously proud of you, right? I mean, are they, you know, how is those conversations now? I mean, you're not having those hotel conversations any longer. You're not, I mean, what's it like now around the dinner table, around holidays or whatever?
Yeah, it's everybody. You know, it's what it is. It's with family. I think my dad was pretty tough growing up, and I think I only remember like the two times he ever shook my hand, and it was when I closed my first major deal. You know, it was a congratulations, and then I like this business. You know, really seeing some of these check sizes coming in. Yeah. You know, and I don't remember what specific moment it was, but You're seeing the year-end tax return or something, but that was the second congratulations. So, I know we're on the right track with what we're doing. I always feel it's not enough. We got to keep growing. I feel that that's
You're an
entrepreneur nature,
entrepreneur,
right?
man.
Yeah. You don't settle. You just keep going for the
I
next
can
thing.
see it in you. This keeps coming to my mind. It's like you're like a tech entrepreneur. There's there's
The
another
family
guy.
thing throws. I was thinking about the family thing. I was like, I kind of separated though. At the end of the day, like if people talk about friends and family around, I'm like, I don't want my family in the business.
Oh
I want
no,
to keep them out. I do some stuff with my daughter where we've done a little videos and things for the company. But I don't want any family on my cap table at all. Let's
you
keep it
know,
separate.
there's a CEO that I have ran into, and I'm gonna see if I can get this right. Domain, you are him. It's his name. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna get this for you real fast. But he has a software that he wrote. So I have an accounting firm, okay, and this to run our accounting firm, we use this software. Now we've passed on this software. We used it for a couple of years. It's called Jetpack Workflow. He's a young CEO. I think he's in his 30s, somewhere around there. He reminds me of you. I've been on a couple of webinars with him, and you need to look into that guy. I mean, you guys are on the same page, and he wrote built had same vibe in just in the accounting space, and the way he went after the accounting space with the same heat and desire like you to build it, make it better, and it is a great platform. There's some other services that we had to have because we do a lot of taxes and stuff, but it's called Jetpack Workflow. And I can't remember the guy's name, but I think you should seek that dude out. I think you guys could do something huge in that space, So what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs coming up? I mean, if you're talking to your son, right? I mean, obviously you're going to shake your son's hand. Do you have any sons or you just have that daughter?
I got two boys. I got my daughter and
So
two
like
boys.
how old are they?
My boys are 7 and 9.
Okay. So my kids are 13, 11, and 9, 2 girls and a boy. So, I didn't have a great dad. So I'm not saying your dad's bad. He's just, I mean, that's just the culture, I would assume, right? I mean, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's
Absolutely.
tough, but he's really love on the inside. What advice would you give him today? I mean, especially in South Chicago? I don't know if you're in South Chicago, but I know it's dog eat dog world in Chicago. What advice would you give your sons now? I mean, what would you say to them?
The one thing when we think of leadership is always like understanding your own values so that you can identify that with yourself and commit to those are the principles that you live on. So for me, it's always discipline, continuous learning, and empathy. With my kids, I always revert to that. The one thing I felt like I went through the years of the teenager, you're being lost and stuff, and I didn't really have that purpose. And I set that purpose with these kids. I said, look, I'm going to give you a definition of what that is. It may change or evolve as you grow up, but here's something to start off with. Find what you love to do and be the best in the world at it.
Come on.
Really, and get that sense of here's a passion, but I'm just going to drive myself. And easier said than done, but it leads to those conversations. Like, how do you do that? Well, you got to have a desire to do it. You got to have that motivation and drive.
Come on.
But then all these little things that come up along the way ties to those things, that discipline, right? From that moment you get up, are you rolling around in bed, fighting yourself to get out of bed, or can you snap up and say, it's time to play the game? And you've committed to it and you're not fighting with yourself. If you got to do it, you just determine. And that's that level of discipline to execute. We talk about continuous learning to the point where I talked about some of my struggles with it. But now I reflect and look at the way I learn as a learning pattern and challenge myself and saying, hey, I have these streams where I learn things through short form content, reading blogs, Wikipedia. I have long form. I can actually sit down and read a book, which I actually found is what helps with most of my ADD and exercising the brain that way. Then I got learning from subject matter experts, having conversations with you. Now I know the accounting business you got. I got some questions around that. I can talk and learn from you about it. And that's love the nature of a podcast because it allows me to access people that I wouldn't normally be able to access and learn from them. So can I challenge myself and have that as a discipline to push myself and know, am I exercising my learning pattern here? If I got this problem I'm trying to solve, do I need to go beyond this short form, looking up stuff on Google and actually read a book about this or go chase down some subject matter experts?
Absolutely.
Like building the sales function. Right now I'm talking to I just talked to one, hey, can I get some advice about pricing? And a guy spent an hour with me.
Yeah, I loved your pricing too. I was just impressed. I'm telling you, everywhere I was looking for holes. And I mean, even your pricing is done well on Deal Room. I mean,
Yeah, we keep changing it. Keeps changing.
yeah, I mean, it's a moving target. I mean, I struggle with this every day. I mean, the outbound sales thing is where we're at too. So inbound is great, and it provides a great stability and a great, numbers, but to really scale, you got to be outbound. But it's just a process. You'll figure it out. All right, man.
Yeah,
I'm really honored for you to come on the show, and how can people get a hold of you? Just go to dealroom.com. Tell us how, what's the best way? Dealroom.net. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
LinkedIn. If anybody is interested in learning about M&A, we have a site called mascience.com. We have like 1,500 pages of content on M&A. Myself, I'm on LinkedIn, just Kison, Kison Patel on LinkedIn.
And you got a podcast, M&A Science, right?
Yep.
That's, you can find that on Apple or any podcast. And I'll have a link in my show for you. All right, Kison, it was awesome to meet you. And, maybe I'll follow up in 5 years from now. Hopefully you've acquired a lot more than where you're at.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at savvyradioshow.com. Connect on Twitter at LandlordBook and always be buying assets.